Do you find yourself constantly spending more money than you're making in your business? As a small business owner, it can be really easy to see those profit margins shrinking and your expenses growing. So let's talk about how to stop that from happening so that you can continue to have good margins in your business, but most importantly, how you can stop living paycheck to paycheck, or if you're not even paying yourself yet, we need to fix that right away. So in today's video, I talk all about how to actually make money in your business instead of spending it all on your business. Hello, welcome back. My name is Christina Scalera, and I'm all about creating a business that lets you live the way that you want to, but more importantly, that lets you work when you want to, not when you have to. I call these self-managed businesses because they are managed by themselves. They seemingly operate without you, except for when you like to waltz in, do your magic, and then walk back out, and they're running profitably without you micromanaging every single little task. If that sounds like something you're interested in, then this channel is definitely for you. You'll want to make sure that you're subscribed. I know I'm really annoying about that, but it makes a huge difference to see who's subscribed and who's liking the videos, and most importantly, who's sharing and commenting. I do not take any comments for granted, and in fact, I'll respond to every single comment that comes in. But today we're talking about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart because it's something that I suffered through for many, many years of my business. I couldn't understand that no matter how much money I made, no matter how much more I made month after month, it never seemed to actually exist in my bank account. It was incredibly stressful, very anxiety inducing, and not something I would wish on anyone. So let's take a moment and look at all the culprits of what might be causing this in your business so that you can fix them or avoid this entirely. The first one is pretty obvious. It's overspending. And most of the time, I would justify this over expenditure in my business by saying it was something that my company really needed in order to be successful. But in reality, there's very few things that your company actually needs in order to be successful. In fact, the most important activity you can do in any business is focus on selling, not even marketing, but selling. Beyond selling, everything else is just kind of icing and toppings on your cake. If you do not make sales, you do not have a business. So that is the most important thing to focus on. However, there is no rule, there is no guide that says that you have to be invested in 12 masterminds and 94 courses and every journal and workbook and everything that ever existed in order to have a successful business. In fact, if you are spending all of your money on courses, it might be time to actually take some time to go back through and do the courses you signed up for instead of just buying new ones that make a new promise or have a new instructor that you're hoping will change everything for you. I can promise you in all of my years of buying and teaching online courses, they definitely do have a place, but if you are already invested in many, many dozens of online courses that you haven't watched, you have to be realistic with yourself. What actually is the chance that you're going to do anything with the next one you buy if you haven't done anything with the ones you've already bought? So how about you take some of the ones you've already bought, watch those, glean the information and knowledge that you can from them, and then you'll be even wiser, smarter, more prepared for the next thing that comes your way. You might not even need that next course that pops up for you. Where I find online courses to be really helpful is where they create some kind of community or give me special access to the instructor, or if I just want to kind of be in that instructor's energy, that's where I find it really, really helpful, and I'll listen to those courses on repeat. Like if I just really like the way that person thinks and I want to be more like them, then I think that's a perfect fit for investing in an online course. But as far as someone who is teaching you a skill, most of those things can be learned off of YouTube, and you don't necessarily need to spend any money on them, especially if you're wondering where all your money is going. Okay, so you can cut back on spending all you want, but if you don't have this second step in place, you are going to continue to have incredibly high highs and low lows, which is very, very stressful. So the second thing you're going to implement in order to have some money back in your bank account and stop overspending is to create some kind of forecast or cash flow management. If you do not understand when cash flow is going to run out because the payment plans are ending or your clients are being offboarded at a certain time, if you don't understand when these things are happening, you are not going to be able to properly prepare for a slow season of business, which we all have. So even if you have a nice savings account, If you do not account for the lack of cash flow that comes in either seasonally or because some leads are drying up or whatever, then you're not going to be prepared for the cash crunch that comes next. This is always where I see financial problems in business, including my own. So before I started doing any kind of financial forecast for my business, I was always wondering, where is my money? I don't understand. I just made $56,000 last week. Where the heck did it go? And so because I wasn't doing any kind of financial forecast, I didn't understand that I had so many expenses that were like backlogged. I put on credit cards I needed to pay off, or I didn't understand, future expenses, new campaigns, things like that were coming out that I had to earmark that money for. So I was constantly in this cycle of getting ahead and then falling back behind. And it didn't feel good to be there. So what I did to fix that is I created a forecasting tool. It's just a Google sheet that I use in order to plan my months. And I can see how far off of my forecast I am. So, you guys watch the weather forecast sometimes. I know we don't have cable anymore, but like when you're in a hotel, or just pretend like you have cable, you put the news on and the weather forecast comes on, right? They tell you, oh, it's going to be sunny today, but like maybe you live in Colorado sometimes, and they lied because they don't know the weather here ever. And it actually ends up snowing all day long, right? The forecast is helpful because you're trying to plan for the weather that's coming, but it's not always accurate. And that's why a financial forecast is critical, because that is what allows you to see, oh, I predicted a $10,000 month. I actually only made $9,500. So I need to make up for it in the next month. Or I predicted a $10,000 month. I made $12,000. That's great. We can earmark some of that for something else or put it in reserves, whatever. If you do not know what you are reserving your money for, or whether you are hitting these financial targets month after month, you are always going to be constantly living in a cash flow crunch. Because if you don't know what kind of numbers you need to be hitting, then how will you ever hit those numbers? You might get lucky and some months exceed them, but for the most part, what I've seen in my clients' businesses and my own is that if I am not tracking this, if I am not setting these cash flow goals, not based on, a number I pulled out of my butt, but actual forecasting from previous years or just numbers I want to hit in order to, meet goals in my personal life or what I want to pay myself, whatever. If I am not hitting that, I need to figure out why. And I also need to figure out how to close that gap for future months in order to continue to meet that cash flow that I need. If you think a video about forecasting would be helpful, let me know, because that's something I'm considering creating some content around, but I'm not sure if that's interesting or exciting for anyone except for me. So let me know in a comment down below if that's a video you'd like to see in the near future. Okay, so the third thing that's going to lead to a cash flow crunch where you're never gonna know where your money went is if you are suddenly seeing your sales dry up. And this is problematic for lots of reasons, but mostly because you are going to start tapping into whatever reserves you have, whether that's actual cash in your bank, or if you're running on a really slim margin, you're gonna have to start tapping into your credit cards to pay off your monthly expenses, any course payment plans that you're on, or contractors that you've hired. So that is not an ideal place to be in. And a lot of people go about selling the wrong way. They think, I'm going to create this thing and it's going to sell in the world, and then I'm going to figure out what to do with the proceeds of selling that thing. No, decide how much money you want to make from selling that thing and then do everything in your power to hit that number. And you might not hit it. You don't always knock it out of the park, but you can get pretty close oftentimes if you have a number in your mind. If you don't know what you're working towards, you don't have that number in your mind or written down on a forecast or something, you're not going to know how much of it you need to sell or how hard you need to go in order to sell enough of that thing to meet your goal. So you have to have this number written down someplace. It cannot just be a fly by the seat of your pants, heart intuition, feeling into how much money you think you should make this month. You might get away with that a few times, but I can promise you right now, you're watching this video because you're interested in how to improve your cash flow and stop living, the business equivalent of paycheck to paycheck in your small business. Number 4, this is always going to lead to a cash crunch, especially if you're not prepared for it. Anything that is an unforeseen emergency. And I've seen people that have had to refund clients who canceled their contracts months prior. I've seen people who got hit with a chargeback from, some internet pirate that stole their course or something. And the chargeback comes almost a year after that person bought the course. There's all kinds of different emergencies that can hit your business. And that's not even talking about the emergencies you might have in your personal life, where it would be nice to have a little extra cash from your business to pull over and use in that instance. Oh, and I'm not even remembering the fact that 2020 was a thing. So there's always something that can possibly happen in your business. And we just want to make sure that you avoid any kind of emergency putting you into further debt with credit cards or eating up your entire savings fund. So make sure that every single month as you're going through that forecast I talked about, you have a little bit of money set aside for some kind of business emergency fund. Another thing that really helps with managing emergencies is investing in insurance for your business. So I've covered that in previous videos, or I covered that when I had my shop. It's still up as far as I know on the contract shop. I talk all about insurance and things over there. So if you want to go back and watch some of those older videos that I created about what kind of insurance is right for your business, that is available to you. Okay, so the fifth and final thing that is totally going to sink this business ship you're sailing is mismanaging your finances. Like if you are not doing any kind of bookkeeping, forecasting, your records are terrible, you're not saving any receipts. I know these things are a pain in the butt, but they're just something that comes with the territory. So we like to think of our small business as like fun and engaging on social media, but there's also this administrative side to it as well. And just because you are bad at math doesn't mean you have to be bad at finances. In fact, the two are not related at all, except for being able to do addition and subtraction. So if you are bad at addition and subtraction, then we might have some bigger issues on the horizon as a small business owner, because I have questions about your client prices and invoicing and things like that. Obviously, I'm joking around with you. Like you have to know how to add and subtract to send an invoice. But if you do not know how to do that, or you don't know how to manage your books or reconcile them or anything like that, these are fortunately very easy to outsource. And in this instance, while maintaining good financial records is going to cost some money, and step number one or strategy number one was like, don't overspend. I actually think that if you are just like not going to do this at all, hiring a bookkeeper is a great investment. I think you can find an excellent bookkeeper for a relatively inexpensive monthly cost, somewhere around, $100 to $500, depending on all the services they provide, how quickly they have a turnaround, that kind of thing. This is someone who is going to change your life, not just for your forecasting and seeing where your money is going, but because you can start to review the P&Ls, the profit and loss statements that they're creating, and you can use that as a way to see, what products are selling well, where you're overspending. So this is an investment that I would encourage you to make as soon as you possibly can if you are not good at keeping up with the books, which most people who run their own business are not, because it's time consuming and you didn't learn that stuff in high school. I know a lot of the things that we talked about today are not like the most fun to talk about. This isn't the fun, sexy strategy of how you grow on Instagram. But if you want to be rich, I'm telling you right now that these are the things that you have to start looking at and putting into place in order to keep growing as a business. And oftentimes I find that the most potential for growth is with the people that are the most resistant to actually doing this work and looking at their books and opening up their bank statements. So if that's you, if you're like cringing every single time you go to open up your apps for your bank accounts and things like that, just know that you actually have the biggest potential to make sure that you are wealthy in the future by changing some of these habits that will take a little bit of time to get used to, but they are definitely easy to expand and improve upon with some practice. And that's exactly what this is. It's practice. You're not going to be good at this stuff right from the beginning. You're not even going to be good at it a couple months in. This is going to take some dedicated, consistent effort on your part, but luckily not too much, especially if you're able to outsource some of the things you don't like bookkeeping. These are the strategies that I use to go from $73,000 in credit card debt just a few years ago to multiple six figures in a savings account and retirement account, like two separate accounts. Plus, I just bought a second house here in Colorado up in the mountains. So this is definitely something that I think is worthwhile paying attention to, because when I started paying attention to my finances and not just winging it every month, that is when everything changed. That's when I was able to stop living paycheck to paycheck as a business owner, and I was able to pay myself a really good salary, and I was able to invest in some of the things that I'd always heard people talking about but never knew how they did it. So this is something that feels overwhelming right now. It should, especially if this is new to you, but it's something that is worthwhile. It's like learning a new language. It's going to be confusing. The terms aren't going to make sense at first, but I can promise you that if you stick with it, if you keep learning about this money stuff, especially as it relates to your business, you are going to see huge improvements. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but in 3 or 4 years, you are going to be a totally different person with money, because money management is a skill. And you can learn skills. And if you're wondering how I, as a self-employed business owner, was able to buy 2 houses in less than, I think it was like within 9 months of each other, both in very high cost of living areas, both at unideal times to buy them, and also build up this hefty savings account, I'm going to be showing you that in the next video. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you ask me all the questions that you have on your mind, because I'm here to answer them. And thank you so much for watching and tuning in. And make sure you give that little thumbs up button, because I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you in that video. Take care.